Hey gang, Jake here. Remember how last month I said it was going to be a hell of a year? Well, it's shaping up to be that way already, though so far it's in a positive way. We're going to be slammed with tons of releases this year, but we're already seeing the start of this deluge, so that's what I want to talk about today. We're going to do a double feature though, because on top of the game that you're probably here for, there's another game that you probably haven't heard of, so let's get into both. I want to start with Legends Arceus. This was a game that I was cautiously optimistic for, and that optimism stayed pretty consistent leading up to release. I'm happy to say the game is pretty dang fun. There's a lot to get into with it though. So let's start with the gameplay. I know if you're watching my content, you're probably at least familiar with this, so I'll try to keep it brief, but I think the gameplay loop works really well. A common complaint I've seen is that Pokemon tend to just wander around, and I agree that giving them daily routines would be neat, but I think that this is satisfying as is. The game's not exactly difficult, at least until a certain post-game boss, but I think the current difficulty level is pretty damn good. You gotta be present, but you can still make progress fairly quickly. The story isn't anything complicated, but I like the way it's structured. I do wish we got more from certain characters, the rival specifically, but the story as a whole isn't a massive focus this time, so I don't really mind. Overall, it feels like the discourse over this game has been fairly split. A lot of people don't see the new additions to the formula as enough after all this time, but personally I feel like what's here is fresh enough to justify a purchase. The only real criticism I have that hasn't really been echoed into eternity is that next time around, can we get Monolith Soft on overworld design? It's kind of barren as it stands, and comparing Hisui to places like Allrest or Hyrule, it's clear that they could do some good work if this becomes a regular side series. If you're on the fence, I'd say try it out. You may end up loving it, but maybe see about borrowing it before you dedicate the $60. That is pretty hefty. So now that we're through there, let's talk about another game, one you may not have heard of. Dexter Stardust is a little indie game that's releasing soon, and I was fortunate enough to actually receive a review copy from the developers, Flynn's Arcade. I wanted to preface this with that warning, but I want it to be known that it did not impact my thoughts on the game, nor did they request for it to. The other thing I want to clarify is that this game isn't really meant to be beaten efficiently. It's a point and click, and thus far, it's pretty relaxing. I didn't want to ruin that for myself, so I chose not to rush it, and because of that, I actually haven't beaten the game. Still, I feel I'm far enough to give it a first impression. The game's set in an Isaac Asimov-style solar system, with the player taking control of a cargo carrier with a penchant for Mexican food. The setup's not particularly earth-shattering, but I think it suits the point-and-click genre really well. The same goes for, well, pretty much every other aesthetic factor in the game. The graphics, characters, scenarios, all of it feels like it fits perfectly with the likes of Monkey Island and Day of the Tentacle. The game's not perfect, I think the localization could use some work, and there's one or two grammatical errors here or there, but it also does some really cool stuff, like every location you visit has a director's commentary you can access at any time, which is super sick if you're interested in the dev process. For the price and the amount of content, I think it's a pretty damn good package. If you want a chill game to chip away at, or a nostalgic throwback to a mostly diminished genre, check it out. It's coming to the Switch on March 3rd for 10 bones. So that's that. Thank you guys for watching. I know that I've been doing a lot of reviews lately, but that's just because it's been really hectic recently in my personal life. I'll get back to the usual content once everything slows down, and I've got some videos I'm really excited for you guys to see. There's not much else to say, so just consider doing the usual liking and subscribing, and I'll see you guys next time. Au revoir.